Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 182 News Podcast. This is your host, Poppin' Curbs, and we are on episode number 6. Well, the world has changed quite a bit since the last time we spoke just 2 weeks ago. At this point, obviously we are in uncharted territory. I hope everyone is just chilling at home with their loved ones, practicing their social distancing, and my thoughts are with everybody. I know I have some international listeners where things are even crazier than they are here in the States. I'm in Indiana. We haven't really been officially quarantined or told to stay home, but they're obviously encouraging it. My hands are about to fall off from washing them so much. It's scary. I don't know what's happening, but I do know that I wanted to get a new podcast out and hopefully provide a little bit of relief or escape for those of us who are just stuck at home with nothing to do. On today's episode, I want to touch base on a couple quick things in regards to recent news, and then I want to get into a fascinating conversation with David Goldman. If you don't know who David Goldman is, he was the photographer for the Enema of the State album cover. So again, as I try to kind of bring these stories to life, I want to hear all these different perspective and kind of history throughout the band. I thought it'd be fascinating to get the photographer's perspective on this famous album cover. Everybody knows the cover with the nurse and the glove, but how did it get to that point? Whose idea was that? What were the guys like on set that day? So it's a fascinating conversation, and I really hope you enjoy it. So in regards to the news, quickly, Alkaline Trio was set to kick off their tour on March 24th with Bad Religion. Was really looking forward to that. Was looking forward to it even more when Skiba kind of teased that they were going to release an EP the day before the tour. So that was originally set to release on March 23rd. Obviously, with the situation going on, they had to cancel their tour, and I was still wondering if that EP was going to drop, when it was going to come. Well, they surprised us all last week, and Matt essentially said they got it out as quick as they could, which was last Thursday. So the new Alkaline Trio EP is out. It's just titled EP, which is pretty funny. The front cover, Matt said, is his neighbor's house that lights up at different times. It's such a great Matt Skiba cover. You can tell he had a very large hand in making it. The EP is 3 songs. There's kind of a Skiba dominant song, Minds Like Minefields. That's my current favorite. Then there's Radio Violence and Smokestack, which are both primarily Dan songs. I'm enjoying it. I'm always down for new Alkaline Trio music. I love them. They're great. You should totally check them out. It did get released on 7-inch vinyl, as we discussed before, 1 song on each side. There was a blue one numbered to 1,000 or numbered out of 1,000 that was available in the US via Kings Road merch. And then there was also a red UK exclusive out of 500. So of course I buy both of those, and then they drop a black one that I guess doesn't have a number and is unlimited, which it always pisses me off when something gets released and I order it, and then later in the day they release like another version. It's like, okay, I would have bought that if you just would have fucking had it live that morning, but now I'm not going to pay shipping again, so whatever. But it's out. It's definitely up on Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. So totally check it out. May go a little bit more in depth on that at some point, but just wanted to announce that it is out there and you should totally listen to it. Matt did have his solo art show, so I was providing some coverage on that on the Blink-182 Online Twitter account and Instagram account, and so I was wondering if that was going to happen. It was Friday the 13th. It was kind of the first week when all of these cancellations started coming out, and I was thinking, gosh, I don't know if he's going to do that or if they should do that, but the show did go on. He did wear some gloves. I saw some people with pictures with him from that evening, and Skiba was rocking some gloves, which was probably smart on his part. I was wondering if they were going to have mostly originals or if there were going to be any prints, anything like that. It did look like mostly original art. As I mentioned before, real art is usually fairly pricey, so most of these pieces were starting at about $1,000 and up. Some pretty cool pieces, pretty large pieces. The guitars, he had some awesome guitars that he had custom painted. Those were pretty pricey. From what I gather, those were looking at 15 grand plus, which, if you got the money, it's probably a pretty dope piece to have a Matt Skiba painted guitar, chilling in your living room or man cave or wherever. So the only smaller items were, they had a dagger that was pretty cool, and then he had some of those masks he was painting. There was a cool Batman mask. I think those were in the 600-ish range. So again, art shows usually premium. You're getting one-of-one stuff, so you got to kind of pay the price for original art. And it seemed like it was successful. Seemed like he had a great time. So happy for Matt, and I'd love to attend those at some point. And hopefully he keeps them going, and maybe even offers some online at some point. Let's get into Angels and Airwaves. So Angels and Airwaves was set to kick off on May 1st in Atlanta through June 7th. We haven't heard any official cancellations at this point. So in the States, for the most part, everything is essentially canceled through April for sure. We have not heard anything on a lot of this stuff, basically from May moving forward. So I don't know if we're playing this week by week, month by month. A lot of this stuff are festival shows, large gatherings. To be honest, I'm not sure this is going to happen, but as soon as it gets announced, we'll let you know. In regards to the new Angels and Airwaves album, Tom kind of had a famous Instagram post that he deleted like he usually does when he spills any beans on anything. He had mentioned that there are 10 songs laid out for this new album. So Tom has posted quite a few updates, which is good, at least to see him in the studio. And at this point, he was saying there are 10 songs laid out. Now, my question is, do 2 of those include Kiss and Tell and Rebel Girl, which they probably do? So if that's the case, then we're basically looking at 8 new songs. Not particularly surprising, but we're going to be at the point where Rebel Girl is going to have been out for over a year. So I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping there was going to be a little bit more material than that. We know one of the songs is supposedly Time Bomb, which was teased on December 31st of last year. So we're still 3+ months away and haven't heard anything on Time Bomb coming out. I'm not sure if they were planning on launching that maybe before these new shows in May to kind of hype that up. So we'll see. But apparently at this point, if you include Rebel Girl and Kiss and Tell and then Time Bomb, we're looking at basically 7 or 8 new songs. So I don't know. Obviously looking forward to it. Anything we get out of Tom and Angels is great. But 10 songs, it always bums me out when bands just do 10 songs, especially if they don't have a deluxe in mind or any collector's editions or anything like that. But beggars can't be choosers, so we shall see. Alon Rubin has been doing kind of some Q&As on Instagram Live, which have been cool. He's been taking requests. He just played Anomaly on acoustic, was showing people how to play it last night. Obviously, he gets hammered with Angels questions all the time. Anytime he hops online or does a Q&A, people have asked him, what's the new AVA sounding like? When's the new album coming out? Stuff like that. He essentially came out and said he doesn't know. Ask Tom. So I was actually kind of surprised at the frustration he seemed to kind of give off when asking about these. But several times in these, he's basically said, you got to give Tom on this. Ask Tom, because I don't know. Now, Alon has also been out on tour, very busy with the New Regime. They were out touring with the Silver Sun Pickups, which I was actually hoping to catch them in Nashville last weekend. And Alon basically said at one point they were told they had 2 shows left, and then they made it to the second show, and the trucks weren't even filling in. It was just turn around and go home. So unfortunately, Alon, who his album just came out, Heart, Mind, Body, and Soul, I really enjoy that album. It's fucking awesome. It just came out, and he was providing support for the Silver Sun Pickups on their new tour. And basically a week or 2 in, it was canceled, like most things right now. So kind of a bummer. He said they had to drive basically 30 hours plus from Knoxville, Tennessee to San Diego. So that's pretty crazy. The last thing we need to touch base on in regards to the news is obviously, what does this stuff mean for the Blink shows this summer? Blink was set to kick off May 16th in Mexico. So again, kind of like Angels, this stuff in early May scares me. We don't know how long this stuff is going to last. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how long we're all supposed to avoid crowds, but from what I gather, this could go on for a little bit. So I would not be surprised if these summer shows, these summer festivals, end up getting canceled, to be honest, or rescheduled. They were set to kick off May 16th, and basically were playing large festivals through July 16th in Canada. So who knows at this point? Nothing official has been announced, but again, the trend here so far in the States is everything through April is pretty much totally canceled or rescheduled. And from that point moving forward, it's kind of up in the air. Mark was on a podcast for his son's school called The Supporting Cast. It was a really good listen. And one of the things he had mentioned, and this was before all of these cancellations and this major virus stuff happened in the States, and he had said, we have festivals all throughout the U.S. and Canada and our own dates as well. So as we had discussed in a couple previous podcasts, they had been slowly announcing some festival shows, and I'm thinking, okay, surely to make it worth their time, they'd add some shows in between or here and there. And that quote got me really excited, and our own dates as well, because at this point we have not seen any of those. So obviously it's going to be interesting to see, one, does the tour even happen? Do they cancel all of it? And again, none of this is the priority right now in the grand scheme of things. I mean, everybody needs to just be chilling at home, practicing their social distancing and taking care of their loved ones. But I don't know what's going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens out of the Blink camp. Nothing officially canceled or moved just yet. But I highly suspect the May stuff for sure would be pushed back, but we shall see. One notable date that came up, March 18th, not too long ago, a couple days ago, of 2015 was Matt Skiba's first show with Blink. And so I was just thinking about that the other day. That's been 5 years. I mean, that is crazy. So yeah, the Skiba era is officially 5 years old, which is awesome. I mean, at that point, it was Blink-182 featuring Matt Skiba. So time flies. I mean, it's crazy. But again, I love California, love Deluxe, love Nine. I cannot thank any of them enough for the great times I've had over the last 5 years. So super cool. I just thought that would be interesting to bring up and kind of reflect on. All right, so that pretty much does it for the news. At this point, I want to jump straight into my conversation with David Goldman, who again was the photographer for the Enema of the State album cover. Really cool guy, Canadian guy, which, by the way, every Canadian I've ever met or chatted with is just so fucking cool. The world needs more Canadians. Just an absolutely pleasant conversation, really easygoing. It was just super cool to kind of ask him, how the fuck do you get asked to come shoot this? Did you know Blink? Do you like Blink? Do you even listen to their music? What were the guys like on set? Just stuff like that. So I really hope you enjoy this interview, these conversations. Again, I'm trying to bring out kind of these cool, basically stories that you just wouldn't get anywhere else surrounding the band and just the history of the band. And I personally find it fascinating, and I hope you do too. So without further ado, let's jump straight into our conversation with the photographer of the famous Enema of the State album cover, Mr. David Goldman. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now joining us on the 182 News podcast, Mr. David Goldman, the photographer for one of the most iconic album covers of all time. David, what's happening, man?
How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing great, man. So one of the things I want to get started with is I'd like to get kind of a brief history of you as a photographer, how you got into it, kind of your career, essentially leading up to how you got asked to do this iconic photo shoot.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Toronto, and I had done my schooling in Toronto and did a little bit of assisting outside after I graduated from school. And just through some life things going on, girlfriend breakups, parents moving to condos, dogs can't go to condos, thought maybe it's time to do a road trip. And so I did a road trip from Toronto, and I took myself and my bike and my dog and made my way to LA. Basically, I just took the summer and kind of fucked off and met a buddy who I had met when I was had graduated from high school. We were traveling Europe together, or I met him in Europe, and he lived in Aspen, and he was washing windows and skiing. Like in the winter, he'd ski, in the summer, he'd wash windows. He's just like, yeah, dude, come on down, hang out. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I went to Aspen and hung out and mountain biked and all of that. And then it was fun, but I saw a career ahead and I needed to go. So I made my way to LA, and I didn't know I had an uncle here. I didn't have that many. I didn't know anybody other than my uncle and my cousins, and he helped me to get one job. His son went to school with another kid whose father was a big publicist of Warner Brothers Music at the time, and he very kind, and he did a call for me, and he asked the guy, hire my nephew, and the guy said okay, and he gave me a job shooting a man called Van Dyke Parks, who was a big did a lot of the orchestration for the Beach Boys. But anyway, I did this portrait of Van Dyke. He was a super nice guy, super chill, and the picture was fine, but it was not blowing anybody's mind. You know, it was just like a portrait. And I kind of realized maybe I wasn't ready to start shooting yet, so I started to assist, and I assisted for a long time in LA. And eventually, it was time to stop assisting, and I just started shooting. But I had met a lot of people in my assisting days, different people from record labels and what other photographers that I was working with, and I had made friends with or acquaintances with different people. And one of the people I had become acquainted with was a guy called Tim Stedman, who was the art director at MCA at the time. And so basically, as I was building my book as a photographer, a young photographer, I needed to sort of quote unquote test for my book and shoot shots just to keep getting better and better. And I would take my work to different people. And Tim was one of the people I would take it to as it was evolving. And one day he called me and he said, hey, do you want to shoot this album? And I was like, yeah, man, who? He said this band Blink-182, and I had never heard of them. You got to remember, like, I think they only had an album or two before Enema Of The State. So they hadn't, they were okay known in that area of music and in Southern California, but they certainly weren't, international or even that big. So I said, yeah. And we talked about, he liked the style that I was shooting at the time, sort of very colorful and fun and poppy. And basically that was it. He hired me, and we sort of set about shooting this shot. And the original title was going to be called Turn Your Head and Cough. And to me, Turn Your Head and Cough is like basically a doctor's grabbing your nuts to feel you have a hernia. So that was kind of the thought. And then I think the day of the shoot, they maybe they had changed it earlier, but I only found out about it the day of the shoot, that they were changing it to Enema Of The State. And so for me, enema is just like, oh boy, you got to put a glove on, or like something's going up your ass is basically what I thought. And so that's how I came up with the idea of the glove with the girl, and they wanted the girl, the model. But that was sort of the start for me, assisting, cool. And then shooting and like that. I kind of just told you a bunch of, I think I probably gave you too many answers there.
No, that's all right. So they call you, they say they need you to come shoot this album that's called Turn Your Head and Cough. So do you go to a studio to do this? Like, paint the picture. Where is this? Do you just walk in and Janine Lindemulder's sitting there and they already know they want a nurse shot or a sexy nurse shot, or how did that come about?
Far from it. I had some meetings with the art directors, and we talked about, God, it's hard for me to completely remember, but I knew there were some specific things that they wanted. They wanted Janine. The band wanted her. I didn't know who she was. It's not like this was before internet, right? So you couldn't just be like looking at porn. Yeah. You kind of know that, a certain porn star. I had no idea. I was happy with any girl would have done it at the time for me. So didn't matter to me. But so I didn't know who she was. And then I saw some photos, and I don't know. The photos didn't look so great to me. I wasn't so sure that she was going to be the right model, but the band was super keen on her. And I knew that we were going to have a medical set. So I with my team, Fansha McCarthy, she's an amazing set designer and stuff. And I went with Fansha, and we went to I think we went to Universal, where in LA, part of Universal Studios is where they have their set, like all the set decorations and things like that. So we, based on the information of doing this medical room, we knew we needed to prop it out for a doctor's office. So we got, I don't know, like all the bed and all the beakers and the backgrounds and all that stuff. And one of the key things they wanted was they knew that they wanted that inside shot with the locker.
Yeah.
Wanted it, and they wanted the band to kind of repeat throughout, and they were going to have a bunch of different people. I remember there was a guy in a wheelchair, and there was, although I don't remember if he was legitimately in a wheelchair or if we rented a wheelchair and they wanted it. I don't remember, but different people, and I think some of the people that came were their friends, and I think, God, it's so long ago. I'm told these are questions I haven't thought about in a long time, so I don't know how they cast the inside people, if it was like an open casting kind of thing that I wasn't involved for. I don't think I was. And but anyway, we knew we needed the lockers, so I sourced the lockers. There was different sets that rented a big studio, and one of the areas was going to be the lockers. So we spread out the lockers. There weren't like 50 lockers. It was basically a kind of a blank of maybe like 7 lockers. And then I just shot the different characters, the different fans in front of it again and again and again. And then they built it up in Photoshop to make it look like one big one. You got to remember, this is like way before major Photoshop is the way everybody has access to all of these tools now. It was the guys who had access to it were like the leading edge creative guys who were really sort of messing around like that. And then the room was, like I said, it was built with all the medical stuff for the doctor's office. So we knew we had 3 shots. We knew we had the locker shot. We knew we had the front shot looking at them. And they knew that there was going to be the back disc shot where you're kind of peeking through a peephole. And so for that, I basically took a piece of wood as a template and cut kind of a round hole through it. And I put that in front of my camera as if I'm looking through a peephole. And those were essentially, I believe, and then the 4th shot was the eyeball, and that you would pop the disc off and there'd be an eyeball. And that was a shot that they wanted a few weeks later. So we had already done it, and I was shooting something else, and Tim or somebody else called in and said they needed the eyeball. So at the time, I used my assistant, this guy, David Raymond. I was like, dude, we got to shoot your eyeball right now.
It's really close.
Yeah, super close. So we just shot his eyeball and added it to it, and that was basically the logic for creating it. And like I said, so we knew it was going to be a medical office because it was going to be turn your head and cough. And then when they changed it to Enema Of The State, it didn't change the sets.
Right.
Medical, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the guys in that locker scene that I know for sure, I don't recognize a lot of them, but one is Rick DeVoe, who was their manager. And I don't know if you remembered that back then or not, but he's one of the ones lined up there. So when you say they, as far as like the art direction or knowing which shots, did you get that straight from the label, or do you think that was Mark and Tom, or where did you sense that kind of direction coming from?
The only thing that I knew was coming from the band was wanting Janine. That was clearly the band. Nothing else that I'm aware of came from the band, but that could be totally wrong. They may have won. I never had a meeting with the band and the label at the same time. I had a meeting with the label and a few phone calls, and then the band was like, they were like, yeah, the band wants this model Janine. I'm like, I don't know who she is, so whatever. That was it. I didn't want her because the photos that I saw didn't look that nice. Like I wasn't sure it was going to translate. There was nothing against her. She was perfectly nice and absolutely professional and everything. But I just like the casting shot that I had seen of her. I just wasn't convinced at that moment. But obviously she turned out to be great.
I wonder how they picked her or found her. Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Maybe they are jerking off to her. I have no idea. Like who knows what a bunch of young guys are looking at. It's I don't know. Like again, I'm not like it's not my thing to know porn stars specifically, and I never knew anybody that knew of a specific porn star, especially at that time. Maybe now, everybody knows Ron Jeremy or something, but
Yeah.
uh, but it seemed more rare to know who a female actress was in that thing, or maybe I just wasn't like I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking about that kind of stuff.
So did you get, I guess, a casting list of 5 or 10 other models who potentially could have been on this album, or?
No, I didn't. It was just her. That was it. I was like, they want.
Wow.
I was like, all right, and she showed
She's
up.
she's the one.
Yeah, she was the one. They wanted her. I think she had tattoos. She had a few tattoos. She wasn't like sleeved up or covered certainly the way she is now, or she became, but she had a few tattoos, and I guess they just liked her style in general.
Yeah. That's crazy. So the band shows up. How are they on set? Take us kind of into a photo or video shoot or whatever it is, just with Blink 182 on set. Were they professional? Were they dicking around? Were they hard to coach to get how you wanted, or what?
I mean, you probably know better than me how old they were at the time. They were probably in the early 20s, I imagine.
Yeah,
Late teen,
mid
maybe
to late. Yeah.
like it's like 19, 20, 21, I guess, give or take. And so they were totally cool. I mean, like cool as in, calm and nice. They were kind of like super keen when they saw Janine. They were like, oh, they were kind of like a little starstruck, but they were professional. It was I can't say that I had really any great interaction with the band. It's strange. The bigger the production, the less connected I was with the band. Like I've shot plenty of bands where I spend a lot of time hanging out with the band and getting to know them. But it's ironic because this is by far the biggest visually anything thing that I've ever shot that people recognize. But I mean, I'm sure if I was introduced to the band again today, they would have no recollection of me. Like there was nothing. I was really this guy behind the camera, literally behind a physical camera, and giving directions and talking to them, and they were totally nice. But there was no human connection between them and myself. They
Right.
took direction, they were nice, but it's not like we became buddies or they knew me or it's weird because all the other bands I could say that, whether if it was Muse or Tool or whatever, like I would make very conscious effort to try to connect on some capacity and some level with the band. But maybe because it was my first album cover, and it was a big production. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of moving parts, and it was big in the sense of hair and makeup and stylists and a big studio with a lot of props and just a lot of people going on. That we became further and further apart physically in that sense. So that was a little strange, but
Gotcha.
they were professional and they were giddy and happy to be there.
So most people know that, well, I think they know that the original title was Turn Your Head and Cough, and then it eventually became Enema of the State. So I think you were hired, from what I've read, in March of 1999 to shoot this. So at that time, it was Turn Your Head and Cough.
Yeah, like I said, the first time I heard of it, it was going to be called Turn Your Head and Cough. So yeah, until I got to the studio the day of the shoot, it was Turn Your Head and Cough. It only became Enema the State. I might not even have. Yeah, I mean, I must have heard about it that morning. Yeah.
Wow. So as far as the front cover, was there any alternate kind of shots, or did you know right away it's going to be a close up of this hot nurse?
Yeah, it was gonna. It was gonna. We were limited in space by the sets. Like at the time, I was shooting very conceptual things. I would build sets, and there would be characters. It was very very cinematic how I would shoot. So there wasn't a lot of room for interpretations. It was very controlled, and it was going to be, whether it was going to be like with one hand or like with which hand or what's the expression, but it was going to be like a portrait kind of,
Yeah.
album cover. It was, I mean, it was shot for a CD because that's what people were listening to at the time. Albums had kind of gone away, like vinyl, um, but it was still, very scale wise for a CD, which could blow up to an LP. But yeah, it was very much that shot. It was the front shot, the back shot, the inside shot, and ultimately the eyeball. So no, not a lot of variations. I was very direct to that. So maybe adjusting my camera, but really it was that.
Yeah. So you were the one that added the glove though, right? Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I kind of came up with the whole cover. That's all me, really. The We talked about so much of it was based on the title of this turn your head and cough. They're like, it's going to be turn your head and cough. What do you want to do? Well, that's a doctor's office. That's like this. So the title really, in my mind, is what defined the look of the album cover. There was, if it was like, I don't know, don't forget to mow the lawn, it would have been shot, although that's kind of
Yeah.
it would have been shot outside on grass, like, so it was totally defined by that. And I came up with the whole thing, with the glove, and it just seemed like, yeah, turn your head and cough, you have to have a glove. These were props to get, like, let's get a bunch of this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Are you aware of like the multiple variations of the album? So initially, and judging off of some of the kind of outtakes you had posted, and we'll talk about that towards the end, but it looked like her hat did have the cross on it, and then the Blink 182 kind of patch on her chest did have a capital B. So are you aware that those ended up getting changed on CD releases after it came out?
Well, I know that there was. I know that initially she had the cross, the nurse cross, the medical cross.
Hmm.
I know that the Blink pill was. I mean, I know that it got changed because I guess there was some they were worried about the who is it, the oh my god, I'm blanking on, like, the first aid, or like the
Well, the Red Cross, Red
yes, the
Cross.
Red Cross, sorry, yeah, that the Red
Yeah.
Cross didn't want them, so they eliminated. So I know that like the more recent covers, they kind of stripped away a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, so the first part is on the original one, there is a capital B in Blink 182, and I'm surprised that nobody caught that or they didn't complain about that up front because I know Mark in particular, he's very specific that Blink 182, the B in Blink is lowercase. And
Uh,
so if you look at the very first one that came out, the B, and this is fun trivia for anybody listening, the B is capitalized. It's actually kind of a rare collectible these days because it
I
wasn't on
feel like I
shelves.
wanna. I feel like I want to go to my box of CDs and see from the originals if it has a capital B or a lowercase b.
Yeah.
I never looked at
Yeah,
that.
that'd be interesting. So the first thing they did is they corrected the B. So the second one had a lowercase b, and then story has it that the Red Cross, I don't know if they threatened or just bitched to somebody, but they ended up removing the Red Cross from her hat, and that's still the case to this day. And I don't know. I mean, do you know anything about that? I don't know too much about it.
Yeah, that's only, like, I had heard a similar story, and but that had happened, down the line a little bit. I think as
Yeah,
it got bigger, it seems kind of absurd to me, but
yeah.
whatever. I guess the Red Cross doesn't want to be associated with a porn star.
I
If
guess,
if,
they
if that,
might have been it might have
yeah.
been as simple as that. And
Yeah.
so those are the three kind of US releases that are like the three collectibles.
Huh.
And then what's really funny is if you look overseas, kind of in some countries where they censor certain things, there's some where they have actually kind of photoshopped out her cleavage. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those, but
Wow.
that's kind of funny. I can't remember which countries exactly, but there's several where her cleavage is there's a lot more shirt covering it. So kind of wanted to ask your opinion. How do you feel, 20 years later, such an iconic album cover, 15 million copies sold. I mean, that's a lot of people with your photograph just chilling somewhere. So I mean, reflecting back on that, they just had the 20th anniversary. I went to two of the shows. It was badass. But for you as the person who had that photo and that thought, how is that looking back?
It's really interesting, Ryan. I'm kind of two minds, if I'm fully honest about it. And I know that in these times of trolling and Twitter and everything. You got to kind of be careful about it. As a photographer, I think, or as a person who shot it, I think it's really cool. I'm grateful that I did it. It was a good experience for the most part. It's like I said, it's very rare that anybody could have something that's sort of hit the global market like that. But then there's also like part of me that feels a little bit could have been treated a little bit better. Not necessarily the band, because I don't know to what capacity the band is actually involved in this kind of thing. But I think that I could have been treated a little bit better financially when it comes to the merchandise. Like them, they tried to use it. They didn't. They really wanted to underpay me. Like, so that part rubs me really wrong. I mean, I didn't make the music. I'm fully aware of that, but I did make the art that is iconic for that piece. So I think I respected the contract for the 20 years. I never used it for merchandise. I never did anything, and I didn't try to monetize it in any way. And then when the band did this tour, to be perfectly honest, like they kind of stole that image without doing any. They asked for merchandise. They offered me $1,500, and if you know anything about a band and a tour, $1,500 is like a joke. And so I had asked for a different sum. They ignored me and they sold it anyway. So I'm kind of in a weird headspace about it, and I was fine. If you had asked me in this past April, in 2019, I'd be like, yeah, man, it's awesome, it's cool, everything's cool. But now I'm having a bad taste in my mouth, and I feel like I've been mistreated. So for anybody that listens and thinks, oh, fuck him, he shot this thing, he should be happy about that. That's the two sides. Like, I am happy I shot it, and it's cool, and I will always be associated with it. But I think it's not cool to disrespect like the artist and take advantage and use, like, if the band's music was stolen, they would go after the people who were stealing it. So as the person that created the artwork, the art has essentially been stolen from me. And I'll also say I do not own the copyright for it. The label owns the copyright. It was the first record I ever shot, and photographers are at a disadvantage. It's very much like, you want to shoot it, you have to sign this contract. And the way bands would sign terrible contracts and have, and not make much money or whatever. But the contract was like the label owns it and throughout the universe in perpetuity and the whole thing. And I signed it, and whatever. Nobody knew that it was going to be as big as it was going to be big. But also the contract says if they want to use it for merchandise, that they need to renegotiate, and they did not renegotiate. And so that's the part that upsets me and makes me feel like I was mistreated. But so from the two sides, I have two different views about it. But I don't hold the band accountable for those decisions. I think those are label and merchandise decisions.
Yeah, gets all lawyery and crap. And it's named number 13 all time on the Billboard Greatest Covers. That's pretty wild. I just, on our Blink-182 online social account, I just posted a dude who had it tattooed recently on his quad. I was going to ask you, how do you feel when you see, I mean, there's tons of people who have it tattooed. Have you seen them in person, or how do you feel about that? Is that rad or weird, or what do you think about it?
It's cool. Like, I love Tool. Sometimes I look at the art for Tool albums. I'm like, man, that would be a cool tattoo. A pretty dope tattoo. But I think it's a little strange, but I get it. I mean, I definitely get it. If something has meant so much to you, then I see why you would do that. Why a person would do that. I have not met anybody firsthand who's done it. I kind of get a kick out of when people meet me and they find out that I shot it, and they're like, because I don't know, I'm just like a regular looking dude. I don't know what they expect, but it's kind of like, wow, that's crazy, man, really? Yeah. And so I kind of get a kick out of that. Not maybe it's a little bit for the ego, but it's more just I enjoy how happy the other person seems to be when they sort of meet me, because for them it's like it's connecting this dot from their youth or whatever, which I had nothing to do with on a personal level. But I just get a kick out of it. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, do you just bust that out at like bars or parties?
No, I don't. I'm very. I don't. Maybe it's because I'm Canadian, but I'm very like humble. I don't really talk about it too often. Now that it's 20 years later, and they had the anniversary, and I have started to say it a little bit more when, like, I shot a band a couple of weeks ago, and oh my God, I'm blanking on their name. Wait. Oh, Caspian.
Okay.
You know that band?
No, not familiar with them.
Yeah, so I talking about credibility or talking about if I mention the name of if I mention that I shoot it. So I was shooting this band Caspian a couple of weeks ago. I haven't shot music in a long, long time, but I shot Caspian. I was talking to the lead guitar guy, and he's like, "Oh, do I know anything you've done?" And I was like, "Well, I shot this Blink album." He's like, "Dude, you shot that?" That's why I have the handshake. And so I guess in that sense, it can immediately gain some credibility and trust if I'm photographing somebody, and then it puts me in a place where, like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing, he's not wasting our time or whatever. So I'll occasionally I'll bring it up for that, but I don't just sort of throw it around. I don't use it to meet chicks.
Do you do you remember, for one, did you have any idea that it was gonna even be a successful album, much less an iconic one?
No way. I don't think anybody knew. I mean, maybe in youth they were like, yeah, man, this album's gonna be amazing or whatever. Like, I don't know, you have to believe that when you're making something. But for me, it was my first album cover. In a way, like, as big as it was for those guys, in my own world, it was a big graduation. Like, it was a big step for me. I had gone from assisting to shooting, and I had been making contacts at record labels and things like that. And then I shoot this album, and it's not really my type of music. I have a different aesthetic for music. Not like I have nothing against it. It's just not what I gravitated. So I didn't really know the music. So I wasn't in a position to say, yeah, this is amazing. This is gonna be, but it was fascinating to see it start to gain traction. And I remember there was a billboard on Sunset Boulevard, and as a photographer, I was like, "Fuck, that's incredible! I have a billboard on Sunset Boulevard. That's like,
Oh, I bet.
yeah, and somebody told me, although it was again before iPhones and stuff, somebody said that they had seen a billboard in Times Square in New York, which I would have given a lot to have taken a picture of and seen, but I
Oh
didn't.
yeah.
So that was pretty awesome. But again, I had no idea that it was going to be as big as it was, and it was a pretty cool ride. But I did feel, like, isolated from it, like a hired hand. I shot it. It was growing, and all my friends and acquaintances knew about it. But there was no. I mean, it was about the music. The band was shooting videos. It was all part of the package. So
Yeah.
it wasn't connected with it.
Do you remember the first time you walked into a record store and saw it, and how did that, was that just super cool, or how did it make you feel?
Yeah, I grew up with albums, like vinyl, and when I knew I wanted to be a photographer, I was like, man, I want to. It would be so cool to, like, just to go back a bit. Like, to me, working in the music world would seem like the epitome of everything. When I was a kid, I would go to concerts, and I was like, oh man, I want a job where I can get tickets to concerts. To me, that just seems like you really can't have a better job than getting free tickets to concerts. I
Yeah.
was like, well, what else could somebody want in life? And so then when that started to happen, when I started to work with labels, and remember thinking, man, it'd be so cool to get an album cover, like to shoot. And I would always look at album artwork and who was the photographer, and all of that stuff. I was super into doing that. And where some people are, like, I love music. I'm a pretty big music fan, but I wasn't like a music nerd and knew all of the production. But I knew who the photographers were, who were shooting what I was considering iconic artwork at the time, or whatever resonated with me. So when I did see it as a CD at the record store, I was like, it felt amazing. It felt awesome. It was
Yeah.
really, really cool. Yeah, I loved it.
I'm really glad vinyl is making a comeback. It has been for the past several years, but one of the things that it's just, I hate with all the digital releases and people just not paying attention to it is I remember, you get an album and you look through it, you read the lyrics, you pay attention to it, and on vinyl it's just so amazing to have it blown up and so huge. So even when I don't have a great record player or anything like that, but I buy my favorite albums just because I love the album art so much and I just like that physical thing. So I have several copies of Enema of the State. So it's rad. I got your work chilling in this room next to me. Do you, I mean, have you listened to Enema of the State? Do you have a favorite song, or it just wasn't your thing?
No, I don't. I mean, I know I've heard it because I I mean, obviously there was how many singles came from it? Like six, 5 or 6 singles. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's all the small things. What's My Age Again? Adam's song were the main ones.
yeah, the video. I mean, you saw the videos and all of that, and
Hmm.
but no, I mean, it sounds terrible, but I'm just not into that kind of music. Uh, so no, I didn't
Yeah.
really listen to it. I mean, I listened to it, I heard it, and I have it, but it wouldn't be the kind of music that I'd be putting on.
Looking back, is there anything that you would change about any of those shots? Is there something that just bugs you, or is it perfect?
You know, I'm a big Formula One fan, and I always listen to how the drivers talk about their qualifying. And they're always like, "Oh man, I just missed the hair, or this could have been a little bit better." And occasionally, a driver, Lewis Hamilton, or whatever, be like, "No, that was like perfect. I don't think I could do better." I
Hmm.
think in the context of where I was as a photographer, what I knew and what I had in front of me, I think all my cylinders were firing. I don't think there's anything on that cover that I would change. I think it's great. I think it like checks all the boxes.
Cool.
Technically, I look at it technically speaking. There's nothing that it's not. Yeah, it's good. I'm happy with it.
Cool. So actually the way that I kind of stumbled across your page and found you is you had shared some really cool almost outtakes or alternate shots of this front cover on your Instagram. So tell us about kind of where people can find you. I know you had some really rad prints of these available. If those are still available, let us know where we can find those, see those, buy those, just kind of point people your way.
Yeah. So what I'm doing, just like to tell you what I'm doing now. I do documentary photography, and I travel a lot overseas to India and Bangladesh and Cambodia, and I work a lot with to help to bring awareness to issues and causes that I think are important, and other people do as well, like human trafficking and maternal health and marginalized people. And so I've been doing that for the last 10 years, give or take, which is a very, very different than the music work, obviously, and very rewarding in a different way, like less so with the ego, but more so with this idea of giving back and helping people who need help. I don't have a lot of money to give, but I can use my skills as a photographer to bring attention to these issues, and so that's why I do that. Um, but so I was heading off to India in this past May. I was going to be gone all summer to work on a story. And just before leaving, a friend of mine who's in the music industry, she's also from Toronto, and I was out there, and she's like, "Dude, you know that this is the 20th anniversary of the album?" And I was like, "Fuck, oh my god!" And I was just doing the math because I just remember it being 99, uh, and that kind of blew me away that it had been 20 years. So she's like, "You should do something. You should like, I don't know, like do something cool. Give like maybe have something in the catalog." And I was like, "Fuck, I'm leaving in like a week. I had so little time." And I I thought the easiest thing, I'd actually subletted my apartment in Toronto. I didn't even have access to my apartment. So I had to ask the woman who was subletting if she could go through my filing cabinet to the Blink folder and pull out a contact print. And I was like, I'm going to scan this contact print, and I'm going to offer it. I'm going to offer it up as kind of a behind the scenes thing to sell, and not really thinking I'm going to make a lot of money. More about like showing these things that are not really seen. Everybody knows the one picture, but what I think is really interesting is how do you get to that one picture? Because you
Yeah.
shoot off 100 pictures, and it's a question of like, oh, we're on video, people listening can't see, but like the glove is this way and then it's slightly this way and it's slightly this way and then click, it's fucking perfect, and then it goes out the other way, and then
Yeah.
when you're looking through on a contact print, which is for those who don't know, it's basically an image. It's the negatives that are being printed on one piece of paper, so you can look at a whole roll of film on one piece of photo paper that's blown up a bit. And so you're looking at it with a magnifying glass, a loop, and just looking for all the little imperfections, like what's the right shot? Oh, she's kind of blinking, or something's not right. And then when finally everything comes together and everything's just right, and nobody's making a stupid face, and the light flash and everything, and so that was the shot. And so on that contact sheet is that, like, I have my China marker with an X, and writing 11 by 14 because it needed to be made into a print. It wasn't scanned. I mean, it wasn't on digital. It was negative that was turned into a print that was scanned and done some retouching on. So I just thought that would be a really cool thing to share with people. And I made it available while I was in India, and it's still available. You can reach out to me. Just my email is david@davidgoldmanphoto.com, or my Instagram is the David Goldman Photo, and shoot me a message. And yeah, I just made it available, and I thought it was cool, and it sold a few, and I thought, oh, this is awesome, it's selling a few. And then a bunch more people started to contact me. I had no idea why. I just thought, because I was out of contact. I was in India, and not that they don't have internet there, they do, but I just was personally out of contact. And then I think Kerrang did an article and talked about how I'd made it available, so maybe more people found it that way. So yes, to answer your question, it's still available, and you can get it. You can reach out to me just again through my website, davidgoldmanphoto.com, or my email, david@davidgoldmanphoto, or the Instagram, the David Goldman Photo, and it's pretty cool.
It looks like it came as small as 8 by 10, then up to 20 by 24 or even higher. So it seemed like a really rad collectible in various sizes and prices.
Yeah, and the few that I've seen, because they'll come. Sometimes I can direct ship them to people, but sometimes if they're overseas, they have to come to me. Or a couple of friends bought them, which was very nice. And when I looked at them, because they're also printed on metal, so you don't need to frame them. They essentially they sit off of the wall a little bit. They have like a piece of wood behind it, so it sits off the wall, and it's on this metal material, and it looks amazing. I mean, it just looks awesome. I think it looks really cool. So yeah, we need
to get a picture of it. I may just repost the one you had before, or if you want to send us a picture, I'll be glad to post it for you. It's pretty badass. One question though, when you're talking about picking the perfect photo and which one, who made that final call? Was that you, the label, the band?
I believe I did, because I go through all the contacts, and it just looked like my writing on it. Although it's possible they did. I don't want to say 100% I did, because I probably, knowing how I did things back then, I would make like 2 sets of contact sheets, and I'd give the label them and mine, and we would look through them. But it looked like my writing that said 11 by 14 and with the X on it. So to answer your question unequivocally, I don't remember.
Okay, that works. All right, last thing, and we'll let you roll. Do you have any advice for upcoming photographers, artists, people trying to get in the music scene, just life in general?
Life in general, you have to treat people well.
Agree with that.
Yeah, I think, photography has changed a lot since when I started. Everybody thinks they're a photographer because they have a phone, like a phone with a camera in it. And I say that the difference between a professional photographer and someone who takes pictures is the ability to repeat it. Like, if I needed to go shoot that Blink album again, I could do it. I could do it right now. I didn't fluke into a good shot and add a filter on it. And that doesn't take away anybody who does great shots with filters. I think you can have a good eye and you can do it, but it's a different story when people are relying on you with a budget to create something, to know why you're doing it technically and all of that. But like I said, even as I'm saying that, I know that lots of people don't concern themselves with as much technical stuff that maybe someone of my generation needed to do, because we shot with film and the barrier to entry was much higher. It cost money to buy film, it cost money to process it, it cost money to do all of that. So if you wanted to be a photographer, you had to really commit, not just mentally but financially to it. So there's a big barrier has been removed, the financial part. So people can take great pictures that don't necessarily have the same technical expertise as somebody from my generation. But I still think that if to be a good professional photographer, you have to know why you got what you got and the ability to repeat it. So I don't know. I guess I would say whoever, if they're looking to be professional, just like to know your business, like know what it is you're trying to accomplish. Be able to see it in your mind and try to create that image. It's going to make you a better photographer. It's going to make you a better communicator. Yeah.
Yeah, and for yourself, do you attribute that to work ethic or passion or just grinding or kind of a combo of all of them?
I think you have to hustle. You have to work hard and you have to hustle and you have to keep like it just kind of never giving up. There are a lot of people who say they want to do something, but they're not really prepared to do the work that it requires to do it. So whether it's the 10,000 hours idea or back in my day where you would start in a photo studio, like for a professional, maybe sweeping the dark room and sweeping the studio and learning. I know that that's not how it is nowadays, but still assisting and doing your time and understanding. It just takes a lot of hard work. I mean, definitely people are lucky. People have a name and people have friends or family. And I had an uncle who helped me get my first job at Warner Brothers. I remember that. But I also know that I wasn't really in a position to continue that. So I kind of backed off and then did it on my own. When I first moved to LA, I had there was something called the workbook, which was photographers would take ads in this. It was like a yellow pages, but it was huge, of photographers, and they would take a full page ad and put a photo of one of their photos, and the back was an index. And I, by hand on legal pad, copied every photographer from LA, their name and phone number, and then I just started calling them to ask if I could assist. So it took like a lot of work. It didn't come easy.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Yeah, I love hearing those kind of stories and just how people got to where they are. So, all right, man. Well, we've gone almost an hour. Very appreciative of your time. If there's nothing else you want to say, I'm okay wrapping it up.
Yeah, I'm cool. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It was really nice.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. David Goldman, thanks for joining us. Check him out at davidgoldmanphoto.com. All right, folks, there you have it. Just a super fascinating conversation with David. Very appreciative of him taking time out of his day to come do that. These people don't have to do this, and they know they're doing it for the Blink fans, for the Blink community. So, again, I just can't thank these people enough. It's just so fucking cool to me. So many cool things I learned in there, so much great insight. Really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you liked. Let me know what you learned. I am at Poppin' Curbs on Twitter and Instagram. Would love to hear from you. In the meantime, everybody stay safe out there. Wash your hands. I will catch you next time. Peace.